Hey, what we're doing today, we're looking at if we were to create a co-requisite reading course with an entry-level course such as sociology, biology, psychology, what would it look like? Because one of the things that's different than a reading course that's preparing you for one of those courses and a co-requisite course in which you're going to be in the entry-level course, and the minute you walk out of the entry-level course, you will be in a reading course that's not looking at a whole bunch of main idea, details and facts, inferences, drawing conclusions and what have you. Will be focused on the reading text. And it will be looking at what do I need to know to read this text so that I can learn it so that the information becomes useful. And that's very critical. Does the information become useful? I'm not going to do a multiple choice test or matching or what have you. Can I solve problems? Can I plan with it? Can I make decisions with it? And so what we're going to do today is look at what would we do in a co-requisite reading class that would get the student ready the first day to start thinking in a way that they could begin to use everything that we're going to be learning in the semester and going to be applying, rather than I'm going to teach something this week, and then something else next week, and something else next week. Well, in order to do that, you need a big picture framework. You need the big picture. And the big picture is based on a number of things about how we learn. And one of the things that we know is you learn with the brain. You don't learn with anything else. That's where it is. So what happens in the brain when you're doing this? And that's what we're going to jump into right now. First of all, and by the way, here's a paper that probably will go into the reading textbook next semester. And it has a lot of really good strategies for reading. And every one of those strategies are built around what we need to do and the way we need to think when we're reading. And so I'm going to just kind of pick out a few of these as we go along and relate it to whatever's going on. If we were to take the second bullet we see right here, prior knowledge is essential for comprehension. Your brain learns by linking new information to information you already know. If you want to understand anything, the brain has to connect it, whatever's new, to what you already know. And when we look at that, we realize that we have 100 billion of these brain cells. This is a brain cell. And that when new information comes in, it's got to connect to prior knowledge. What is prior knowledge in the brain? Prior knowledge is all the things that you have ever learned, and it's stored on dendrites. In those 100 billion brain cells, you have these dendrites. Those are things you already know. When you're learning something new, you've got to connect it to it. And that's what that's talking about. And so if I learn something new, and it's related to this, a new dendrite will grow, and that's new learning. Whatever I was learning, this is how you construct meaning, by tying it to what you already know. If you can't tie it to what you already know, nothing is going to happen. So if we look at this one, if we look at this idea, prior knowledge is essential for comprehension. You got to tie information to what you already know. Then this is what's happening in the brain. But it's much more complex than that. By the way, I just drew one other brain cell. There's 100 billion of these. And this is making new information, making connections all over the brain. The more connections you make, the better off you are. Let's just kind of drop down to, let's think this way. One of the things that we know is that I can learn information and store that information in different parts of the brain depending on how I learn it. What I'm doing in my head makes a huge difference. I think I'll just draw this big. Here's your brain. God almighty. Here's your brain. And in your brain, of course this is exaggerated, you've got these brain cells tying new information to old information. Now, if I do not stop and reflect while I am reading and think about my thinking, and that's what doesn't get taught quite often in reading classes, stopping and thinking about the thinking. If I do that, the information will go to this area of the brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex. If I don't do this, there's a real good chance that it will go out here in an area called the striatum. And when information's stored here, because I didn't stop and reflect, that's crucial. Going up here, it tends to get here and I cannot retrieve it very easily. The information just does not come up easily. It's like, yes, I studied that, what was it? Oh yeah. You don't want that. What you want to be able to do is whatever you have learned about any subject, you need to be able to take that information and pull it to this present moment just like that. Which means you need to store it here. Now let me tell you a couple of other things that you will need to know to get a complete picture. Let's say that right now, this very moment, I am reading. And as I am reading, that information goes into temporary storage in the brain. It's temporary. You've got 20 to 30 seconds. You've got 20 to 30 seconds in which the brain holds 4 unrelated pieces of information. That's all you got. And as you start to read the next thing, this information goes out and you're not holding on to it anymore. If you got to tie new information to old information, right? If I've been storing stuff here and I get to this, I can drag it out here and connect it to some of this information I have here. But that's not what the experts, the people who are really good, who become the CEOs, the people who think, whose lives are exciting because they can do something that lots of folks grow up to be my age and can't do. Only if you get the information that you're learning in this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, this is where all planning, decision making, problem solving, that's where it occurs. I'm trying to solve a problem and I've got this information and I've stored it here. I'm just kind of pulling a little bit. Here's what's important to know. If I have stored it up here, organized it and stored it up here, I can take that information at any point that I am along here trying to solve, comprehend, understand. All that information comes to this present moment, to that piece of information that I am trying to learn, and it is a huge, huge difference. It could be tens of thousands of pieces of information to this present moment that's coming right here, rather than just one piece of information. So we're going to be looking at strategies that cause all of these things to occur. Let's look at it this way. Here's a book. I'm reading this stuff. Right here, this is something important. I know I need to learn this. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to come back and study it for a test. Information is going to go here. The same way as if I am studying and my cell phone rings, whatever I was studying at that moment goes here instead of here. Because no reflection goes on, and the short-term memory just got short-circuited. And the same sort of thing. Here's the trick. Through the whole semester in the entry-level course, you're coming to a reading course, what you're going to be doing, at the point you identify something that you say is important to learn, you need to learn it right now. You don't need to wait out here and go back over it, come back and reread your notes, reread everything you underlined, try to memorize it. You don't want to memorize. Memorize goes here. You want it to go here where you can think with it and reason with it. So how do you do that? Here's something that I say is important to learn. The key, there's a lot of strategies we'll use, and they're all work right here. As I am reading, can I step back in my mind and observe my reading and observe the thinking that I am doing about what I am reading? Rather than just reading, hoping to remember what I read, what I do remember goes here. I need to stop and reflect and think about my thinking. And in that moment that I am doing that, I need to apply strategies. So that's what we'll be doing the whole semester, is working with these strategies. At this moment, I need to step back in my mind. What am I thinking? I'm reading this. What am I thinking? First of all, did I understand what I'm reading? I need to step back in my mind. Do I understand it? If I don't understand it, I need to reread it. Because down here, remember, you can only hold 4 pieces of unrelated information. You may very well forget what you were reading by the time this moves out and the next thing comes in, that's already forgotten. Have you ever been reading a sentence and by the time you got to the end of the sentence couldn't remember what it said at the beginning? That happens more often when you don't have a lot of these with whatever that subject matter is. You don't have a lot of the dendrites. Have you ever been reading and have your eyes go all the way down to the page? That's because you become mentally fatigued. And when you become mentally fatigued, nothing tends to be happening. So this brings up another area with what we're talking about. See, in here, I step back and I reflect. Think about my thinking. This new dendrite that I grew, when I connected what I am learning to what I already know, it's going to get reabsorbed unless it gets strengthened. And there's 2 things that we know that are absolutely huge. One is, if I do not re-expose myself to the information, it's going to be more likely forgotten. If I don't expose with an internal conversation or discussion or writing or something, doing something that, with language that causes me to re-expose myself to the information, so when I step back, I need to be using strategies that cause me to re-expose myself to the information and have a conversation with myself. Internal dialogue. And there's a number of things that I can do. First thing I can do, when I step back,